Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. It's Monday, January the 16th. Markets are a little bit quiet in Canada because the U.S. market is closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Celebrations. So I thought it would be a good time for me to talk about what I'm doing at Rocks and Stocks News. And I think that it's a good time to do that because lately I've been talking a lot about that for several reasons. Some of the key reasons are that I have a group of sponsors, and several of those sponsors have been making very important news, and I talk about them on a regular basis. But I've also found a group of companies that have excellent projects, and they're on my radar screen, and I'm kind of trying to convert them into different boxes of the companies that I follow. So let's start with the buckets or categories that I put companies in and why I do that. First of all, I've got my sponsors. The sponsors enable me to do a lot of commentary, interviews with those sponsors, and really keep a close eye on them. So that's why I've been able to, do a lot of interviews with the sponsors and talk about them in my commentary on the sector. And I've got a great group that is in that category. Some of them are making really spectacular news, and several of them also have what I think could turn into spectacular news. And another theme that I'm kind of talking about a little bit lately is comparing what I'm doing to my peers. A lot of my peers these days are sort of lamenting the difficult market of 2022. And when things get challenging is usually when I roll up my sleeves and get working the hardest, because I think that's where the greatest opportunities can lie. And it's also a great way to find and identify and follow closely the companies that I think will be leaders as the market gets stronger. And we're seeing that now. I've talked a lot lately about the bearish trend in the U.S. dollar, having recently gone through a death cross, and talked at length about the fundamental reasons that is happening. And also, I've been talking a lot lately about the golden cross that the gold is going through, and why that's really important, because often where gold goes, so goes the other metals, and also so goes the stocks in those various different metals. And so when gold is in a stronger trend like it has been since November, what you're going to see is the companies that have good projects, that have been working on those projects and eager to tell their stories, are the ones that are doing very good when they put good news out, even in what has been a challenging market, but is now improving. And that's the anatomy for a leader as the market gets stronger. I've talked recently about the reasons that I think the market's going to get stronger. A lot of that has to do with my opinions on the direction of the trends in the price of gold, silver, copper, and other metals. And again, I'm seeing a lot of my sponsors that are doing very well in this current environment. And I think that as we get more catalysts from the metals price participating and putting some wind behind the sails, that they'll continue to be leaders, and leaders they are. For example, one of my top picks is i-80 Gold. They've been on a very strong run over the last since November, on the heels of a very important high-grade CRD deposit that has extreme values of rock values based on the the zinc, lead, silver, plus the overprint of bonanza grade gold. These events have mineralogical events happen at different times, but in this case, they're following a similar path in the rock pack, the structural story, and the rock packages that they're then making the fluids are making their way up these structures, and then they're expanding out into the right kind of rock package. Another company that's done very well, that's a sponsor, is Paycore. They're right beside I-80 Gold, and they have found a similar CRD with the overprint of very high-grade gold. Both of those companies have lots of pending news, and I think that they've got, they'll continue on their trend of improvement in their quite a significant improvement in their stock prices of late, based on news that they've put out from their drilling. Right beside them is Golden Lake Exploration, where I'm in addition to having them as a sponsor, I'm also an advisor to the company. The reason that I threw my hat into that ring is as an advisor, is I thought that I could be helpful in expanding the story, giving them some advice on digital marketing and corporate development kind of stuff, strategic planning. And I'm very excited about that project because they have a tiny valuation, yet they found something very similar to what I-80 and Paycore are finding. They also have a high-grade CRD with high-grade overprint of high-grade gold. All the CRDs that I-80 Gold, Paycore, and Golden Lake have found are in the same kind of rock packages. They have the same kind of structural corridor, if you will, and it's no wonder that they're finding similar things. Right to the south of I-80 or Paycore, or I mean Golden Lake, is Timberline. Timberline is busy exploring a resource, or expanding a known resource. As they expand that known resource, they're moving closer to a very large geophysical anomaly. All the mineralization, as well as the rock packages and the structures, are all going towards that big geophysical anomaly. It looks like a likely suspect as to the heat engine that brought the gold that's in the resource to the resource. And I'm very excited about their expansion to the east towards that geophysical anomaly. They're another company with a bunch of pending results coming out in the not too distant future. Also in Nevada, I'm a big fan of what Walker River Resources has been doing. Their valuation has moved up quite dramatically since early December, when they were drilling two key targets on their property. Pikes Peak is what you call a porphyry type deposit, which is the potential heat source of what brought the gold mineralization towards the surface, that then followed the structures or the cracks in the earth to the nearby Lapon Mountain and Lapon Canyon. And at Lapon Mountain, they found a wide zone of high-grade, widespread distribution of high-grade gold in their drilling, as well as in the historical mining that covers an area from the sides of the side to side in the mountain of about 600 meters. They also have high-grade gold at the hotspot zone at the top of the mountain. That mineralization continues to the bottom of the mountain, which is about 800 meters. So inside of that big area, they also have a network of faulting. Again, this is the cracks in the earth that now enables those high-grade gold fluids to make their way to where they have found it with their drilling. And added in confidence that they're sitting on a big, powerful system is that when those fluids react with the country rock, it chemically alters the country rock. And there's a big alteration zone associated with the structures and the mineralization. Additional information that they're sitting on a big system is, if you follow that network of structures down to the bottom, you get the Laboucan Canyon, which is another important structure. Then you follow it up the other side of the mountain, and they have a larger a continuation of the structural corridor and a big alteration package, and they really haven't even rolled up their sleeves on the mountain on the other side of Laboucan Canyon, and rightfully so. They've been very focused on the Laboucan Mountain because of what they've hit, and they've got a bunch of pending news. Another company in Nevada is Blackrock Silver. I'm really bullish on Blackrock Silver for several reasons. I made them a pick of mine in the tax loss selling season picks. They bottomed in December and are off to a very good start in January, and so that's what I look for in tax loss selling picks. But I also believe that they're a deep value play. They've already got a resource of high grade silver. They've significantly expanded that through drilling that shows a footprint that's almost double what's in the resource. I also like the game plan. I had an interview with their CEO, Andrew Pollard, not too long ago, when they had put out some news about their Silver Cloud project. And he mentioned that at their Tonopah resource, they're following a similar path to success as Silvercrest did at the Las Chispas mine. When Silvercrest put out their first resource, it was right in line with the size of what Blackrock has at Tonopah. And then they continue to expand the resource and also focus in on the high-grade portions of it. By the way, the grade in the Blackrock maiden resource is higher than the grade in the Silvercrest and maiden resource. And Silvercrest is a good analogy because they are also in an epithermal vein network. And the Blackrock is following a similar path as Silvercrest, and they plan to focus in on the high grade and expand the resource at their Tonopah project. Then they've got some bonanza grades of gold and silver on their Silver Cloud project that they announced in the latter parts of 2022. I'm looking for news out of both the Tonopah drilling and more news about drilling on their Silver Cloud project. So that's another sponsor that I have. I'm very bullish on. Galantas Gold is an orogenic gold explorer. They've got an important orogenic gold system discovery. And with these orogenic gold systems, the cracks in the earth are very deep in very old rocks. And what you need to do is to keep going deeper. And so you use that near surface drilling to lead you deeper and try to understand the network of the zones that they've already been drilling, which is focused mainly on Kearney and Joshua that are in close proximity to each other. Then there's another one in the middle of it and some others around it. And so they're all contained within a very small area that is in close proximity to one of these very deep faults in the earth that allow these metals bearing fluids to make their way up. The deeper you get into an orogenic gold system, you see higher grades as you get closer to the heat engine that created this mineralizing event. And other information, not only do you need to follow the gold, but inside of the known veins that they've been drilling, they've found what are called dilation zones. And those dilation zones are where the rocks open up and allow some more of the fluids to pool up. And that network of dilation zones and the other gold mineralization will help them to predictably drill deeper and find more gold. I think ultimately that these veins, because they're so close together, actually are connected at depth. And I believe that's in close proximity to this big fault that's just this big crack in the earth that's just to this immediate south of the zones that they've already drilled into. Really great orogenic gold system. Another company that I follow very closely as a sponsor is Sokoman. Sokoman is also in a orogenic gold system, and recently they hit bonanza grades in their deepest hole, which is about 350 meters. They hit thick intersection of bonanza grades of gold, and that's a sort of a seminal moment for a orogenic gold system. What they see from the zone so far, one goes this way, the other goes this way, and right where they intersect is where they hit what I call a jewelry box, a zone with what they call the 463 zone. And it is a model, it has this exact same model as the Swan Zone in the Fosterville mine in Australia. That was a company maker for Kirkland Lake that made them one of the lowest, when they mined the Swan Zone, that made them one of the lowest cost producers of gold on the planet, one of the highest margins, and was really just a cash machine. And that drove the stock to be an outperformer compared to their peers, and ultimately led to them being a takeover. And that's why these orogenic gold systems are so important, and why I follow some of them. Another company that is in that orogenic gold system camp is a new sponsor that I'm working on an interview with their key technical person to talk about their recent results, which were just spectacular. They hit bonanza grades very close to surface, down about 120 meters. And again, in these orogenic gold systems, you kind of have to keep going deeper usually to get closer to the heat engine. So finding that bonanza grade gold so close to surface is an indicator that that high grade, or that heat engine is much closer to surface than what you generally find, which is like at the Swan Zone, where they were down about 750 meters, where they got those narrow zones with fabulously high grade that were able to mine at low costs. And I'm really excited about Dynasty Gold, and they're a brand new sponsor, and I'm working on an interview with their key technical person here, hopefully by tomorrow. I'm just actually awaiting an email from them to confirm when. And so that's another of my sponsors. Other sponsors, where is my list of other sponsors? Sorry about that. I do have quite a significant group of sponsors, so I don't always keep them at the top of my memory, but I talked about I-80 Gold, Paycore, Golden Lake, and Timberline. Those four are all in the Eureka mining camp, which I'm very excited about. Talked about Walker River and Blackrock because they're in Nevada. I talked about my orogenic gold sponsors, orogenic gold companies, which is Sokoman, Galantas, and the new one, which is Dynasty. And on the base metal front, I'm very excited about what 9 Mile Metals is doing. They're also a sponsor. They've got they're in one of the most important VMS mining camps in the world. It's the third most important in the Bathurst mining camp in New Brunswick. They're finding new occurrences of massive sulfides with very excellent grades. Now the trick is they found them 2,000 meters or 20 kilometers apart. And the next trick is to find the sources of where those massive sulfide occurrences have come from. And that's the model of these VMS deposits. They're volcanogenic massive sulfides. Volcanoes bring the massive sulfides to the surface, and they bring the mineralization in the massive sulfides. So being in an elephant country camp like that and finding new occurrences of massive sulfides is a very exciting thing. It will get even more exciting when they find the sources of the two massive sulfide occurrences that they've found so far. My own company, Advanced Lithium, we've kind of been, I'm trying to turn the company into what I call a phoenix in rising from the ashes story. We're in the ashes because we've had difficulty. We've been punished by the market for our group of lithium salt lakes in Mexico when the Mexican government announced that they're going to create a Mexican national lithium company. And I think right away people thought that, well, that means that they're just going to take Advanced Lithium's lithium deposits away from them. That's far from the truth. We have legal protections on a couple of different avenues. One is that the Constitution of Mexico states that the government is not allowed to retroactively change the mining laws to affect companies in good standing. We're one of only 3 companies with lithium deposits in Mexico that are in good standing. I've also had conversations that they reached out to me. The Minister of Trade in Canada has an office in Mexico because mining for Canadian companies in Mexico is a very big thing. And they've made me quite well aware that we also have protections under the US, Canada, Mexico Free Trade Agreement. But while that's all being ironed out, I believe that we have a catalyst that could get the phoenix rising out of the ashes, and that is our project in just to the north of the Silvercrest Las Chispas mine. We're in the same kind of rock package, the same corridor of structural features, and they have an epithermal vein mine. We have 2 big epithermal veins that have been underexplored. The big one, which is 5,000 meters and has a bunch of outcrops of the epithermal vein, has only been drilled for about 200 meters of that strike. And even in one of the holes, I've got some more data that's going to come out about that, but these epithermal veins tend to occur in clusters. They tend to also have zonation of grade inside of the vein. So where you drill is very important because you're looking for the boiling zone of an epithermal vein. You can be right beside it, miss it, and think you have nothing, and drill 5 feet over and find a mine. And so exploring these kind of big epithermal veins along the strike is important, and at depth is important. And what we know is that Serape vein is 5,000 meters long. It has multiple occurrences where the vein comes to surface. On my January 9th report, I actually showed you one of those key outcrops. And so those are wide open. There's been a lot of sampling along the 5,000 meter long vein. There's been a lot of gold and silver found, and other minerals that are important. And the range of the gold is anywhere from anomalous all the way up to high grade from surface sampling kind of work. So we know we got a big mineralized vein there that is very underexplored. And then near that, there's also a 2,000 meter vein that's only ever seen one hole, but it has the same kind of characteristics. It's has a bunch of outcrops. They've sampled that. The company that held it before us, and there's been widespread gold and silver mineralization and other indicators along that vein as well. And in fact, it looks like those two might come together. What also is important is that to note is that these epithermal veins usually are a network or cluster of epithermal veins. So there's also potential that we could find more of these veins. Sometimes the blind ones that don't make their way to surface are extremely important. Mag Silver found two blind veins in near Fresnillo, Mexico. That's been in the area around there has been in production since the 1500s, mining epithermal veins, and they found two blind ones that didn't come to surface. And the rest is history. It's now in full commercial production. It's a cash machine of a mine. So is the Las Chispas mine that's owned by Silvercrest. They're mining silver at about $6.88 an ounce of silver, yet they're mining 700 grams of silver on average. So these are cash machines when you find the right one. And I'm putting together a game plan to, we're compiling all the data from the historical work, and I'm going to want to provide to the public some images of the outcrops and description of the work that's been done in the past, and then get that information out there so people can understand how significant this Serape project is, and then get to drilling on it. We're going to follow a very similar path to success that the Ermitaño mine, which is owned by First Majestic, found. It's right beside Serape, epithermal vein in the same package as the rock, same structural corridor as Las Chispas and Serape, epithermal veins. In fact, they had one outcrop of epithermal vein which had low grade at the surface. They drilled 150 meters below it. They found very high grade, and then they expanded on that to have a zone of mining, which is currently under operations. And then if you follow that vein down to the east and at depth, it's getting bigger and bigger. And just above it, as it goes like this, had you have drilled over here, you would have missed it. That's what's important about these epithermal veins. You have to explore them properly, and we have two big ones that have not seen proper exploration. So those are the companies that are on my sponsorship program right now. But how I harvest potential new sponsors is I have a group of picks, and those picks, I generally try to get interviews with their management. And I often will ask them if they're interested in becoming part of my sponsorship program, because I have a very strong audience of avid investors in the sector. I provide a service that is very important in that when they put out news, when my sponsors put out news, sometimes within hours of them putting out that news, I'm able to get them on an interview and really dig deeper into the news, so that investors have more clarity on what the significance of that news. Sometimes often, most of the time, that extra deeper dive into the news is very important. Then another thing I provide for my sponsors is commentary in my sector reports. I also have a pretty good network of social media audience that I also provide commentary on my sponsors. And because I know my sponsors so well, I tend to put the most information out about them because they participate in my sponsorship program. But I follow the same model, whether I'm looking at a sponsor or I'm looking at a pick of mine. And in that, I look for companies that have strong projects, are working on those projects, and are working to get new work done, and also are eager to tell their story. Getting back to where we currently are in the market, in the second half of 2022, I found a lot of companies were pulling in their horns. They were not doing as much exploration work, not eager to tell their stories, and lamenting the condition of the market, and really trying to be market timers, in that they hope to be able to crank up the work when the market gets stronger. They will be followers. They won't be leaders. It's the companies that are working hard and eager to tell their story in the challenging time that are the leaders. So I try to avoid those. I'm also finding my peers are lamenting the difficulty of the market. They're pulling in their horns, turtling down, and not putting out as much commentary. And I think that's a reflection of two things. One is that their picks aren't very good, because I've been able to find lots of companies that are outperforming their peers in a difficult market to talk about. And also, I think that it shows that they're scared to get out there and make content when it's a challenging market. And so they're following into that, turtle or batten down the hatches mentality. And with what I'm seeing in the trends of gold, silver, copper, and other metals, and the bearish market that is happening for the US dollar, I think that this is a time when there's a big audience out there of investors that are looking for a shopping list and looking for commentary. And I find that I'm able to capture an excellent audience that are hungry for content. And that's why I provide content through my sponsors. I also have a series of picks of companies that I'm excited about what they're doing. And I think they're candidates to become sponsors. And I'm working on a bunch of those right now. And I often will do the introductory interview with them to show them the power and strength of my audience, and the way that I do my interviews to get the story out there. And so I'll give them a free sort of coverage, and ask them if they want to become a sponsor. So then there's another group of companies that I call my radar screen companies. These are companies that I like their assets, but maybe they pulled in their horns on exploration work, and maybe they're not that eager to get their story out there. So I think that from there, I try to cultivate them into picks that I want to interview. And I think that they have a lot of news to talk about. And some of these on my radar screen are also picks, but they're not as high priority picks as the ones that I consider my current shopping list, or those are the picks that I've made. And there's a whole bunch of companies in that category. I'm not going to go into all of them today, because I've recently put out a bunch of content that you can find on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or you can go on my Substack, where I've been doing a lot of reporting lately, which is rocksandstocks.substack.com. So yeah, that's what I'm doing with the Rocks and Stocks news shows. Lots of interviews with my sponsors, lots of commentary on them. A little less commentary on those that I call my picks, and less commentary on those that are on my radar screen. And the reasons why are what I just talked about. I need to find companies that are that I can interview. They've got good news out. They're eager to tell their story. and that's how they sort the buckets that they fall into. On the immediate horizon, I just yesterday I put out a report that I talked about the companies that I'm following closely that have pending news out. I invite you to check that out on both my YouTube channel or on my Substack location. I'm working on new sponsors that I hope to announce very soon. I just got a new sponsor in Dynasty Gold that I'm working on an interview in the next couple of days for. I've got more interviews that I'm working on, and basically 2023 is going to be a year where I crank out a lot of commentary. 2022 was the same case, but I think I'll be even ramping it up more in 2023 because now we're starting to see the wind getting into the sails of these mining exploration companies and development companies with the US dollar under pressure. Conversely, the metals that are priced and commodities that are priced in those US dollars are getting stronger. I think there's plenty of fundamental reasons why the US dollar has gone through a death cross and will continue to have a challenging and difficult 2023. On the flip side of that coin, we're seeing stronger trends in the price of gold, silver, copper, and other metals. And I think the fundamentals of those are also very strong. For decades now, there's been under-exploration to find new mines to replace the current mines or to develop mines that become future mines. This has created a lot of supply weakness. We can see that in the copper market. You know, I mentioned the other day that in the past, the copper market at the metals where, like, for example, the London Metal Exchange, where they warehouse physical copper for the global demand, they used to be measured in weeks of demand. They had supply there, but now they're being measured in days, sometimes within hours. You get any kind of big strike in a place like Chile, that's a major producer of copper, and you're going to see an immediate crunch in the supply chain. But the supply chain has been weakened over the past few decades, not enough new exploration to find new mines that can be developed and replace the current mines. And even in the current mines, you're seeing the mining companies go deeper, higher, or for lower grade. The head grades are in decline. Same thing with gold. These are all pointing towards strong fundamentals on the supply and demand story. That is part of the reason why, or is a major reason why the trends are looking so good. So we've got a lot of things starting to come together, and it really reminds me of the year 2000. Back in 2000, the US dollar was strong. The commodities were, the metals were weak. The metal companies were even weaker. Whether you looked at the major mining companies of the time, the middle tiers or the explorers, they were at historical lows. Then in 2001, changes happened. The US dollar got weaker, the price of the metals got up, and these companies that were coming from dramatically, historically oversold conditions were launched into a bull market that lasted for a little over a decade. From 2001 till about 2012. And I'm seeing the exact same thing happening in 2022. You had the US dollar fueled by the Federal Reserve relentlessly raising interest rates. When they do that, big global investors will buy the US dollar so that they can buy the US debt, which is getting better interest rates than they see in other asset classes. And so we're seeing an unwinding of that happening with the US dollar. And at the same time, you had in 2022, you had a strong US dollar and weak metal prices. In the latter part of 2022, the US dollar has been under severe pressure that has now led it to a death cross. And at the same time, gold, silver, copper, other metals are trending upwards quite dramatically. In the case of silver, it's already gone through a golden cross. And the gold is now at a golden cross. Copper is very close to a golden cross. And yet, much like the year 2000, 22 saw the valuations of the biggest companies, mid-tiers, and explorers at that historical low valuations like you saw in the year 2000. So the bottom line is what I see here is the making of another one of those multi-year bull markets for metals, and you're starting from a very low base with the gold or with the mining related companies, big to small, and that makes for a very exciting opportunity. It's why I'm busy out there putting out content, finding new sponsors, finding companies to pick, finding companies to interview, have a lot of content come out about the sector, because I think there's a lot of great things to talk about in the sector. And yeah, I think this, what we have transpiring here is an opportunity for investors to make tremendous gains when they do their homework, understand the companies that they're investing in, and not too focused on the day-to-day fluctuations in the stock prices. You got to remember, these companies that I follow tend to be low volume compared to, you know, you look at Tesla, for example, the daily value of the daily activity in Tesla's stock is equal to the entire public companies in the mining sector. It trades more dollars a day than the entire sector. So when you have illiquid or less liquid stocks, they can bounce around a lot more. I'm finding a lot that are trending up, but you can see those bounces. And if you are watching the day-to-day fluctuations in the price, you're likely to make emotional trades. And I've always found that those that do the best in the mining sector are the ones that do their homework. They understand the companies and that they're investing in. They have strong logical reasons why they're investing. And they're not too concerned with the day-to-day fluctuations in the market. The ones that do less good, now you can do well even if you are a stock jockey and you're focused on the day-to-day fluctuations in the stock prices, but it usually leads to emotional trades with less logic and the chance to get whipsawed. You know, sell on the low, buy on the high, get depressed when they go down, sell them, rinse and repeat. And emotional trading is not the way to go. Logical, understanding the logical decision making based on understanding the companies you own and why you own them, and a reasonable time frame to see success is a recipe for success. Emotional trading is a recipe for disaster. And so I try to prevent, with the Rocks and Stocks news shows, the information for you to make better decisions and not emotional decisions. Now, another thing that I've been recently talking about is something that I've seen for a long time, which is that, especially in the exploration companies, they're really in need of an angel investor network, if you will. We see these in the technology space where, you know, there's a whole community, a big community with lots of money that invests in tech startups. Sometimes I think that these tech startups are really, you know, another social media site where you can share cat pictures and that sort of stuff. And the world doesn't really need a new application for sharing cat pictures. It certainly doesn't need more cryptocurrencies. And those are the things that get funded by the angel network in the tech sector. Yet to make all of those dreams of the tech sector or even the big companies on Wall Street happen requires a lot of raw materials to make that happen. Copper, gold as a monetary and industrial use, silver with more of an industrial use, but also a monetary side to it, lithium, which is needed in batteries in your computer, telephone, and electric vehicles. And all of these have the same dynamics. Not enough investors have helped the exploration companies to go out there and find new discoveries and provide the new mines for the bigger mining companies. It's not just that there's not enough of those kind of investors, but let's face it, a lot of the companies in the sector are more interested in paying themselves big wages than they are in finding mines. They're more interested in mining the public than they are in finding mines. And that's another thing that I am a good filter of, is determining which ones are trying to mine the public and which ones are trying to find mines. And I stay focused on those that are trying to find mines. And I know how to interpret the truth machine, the drilling, to understand the difference between the two. And a lot of times it really just comes down to the lifestyle companies that are trying to mine the public. They tend not to do much in the way of drilling. Those that are trying to find a mine, they got to use the truth machine and drill to find a mine. And that is my number one indicator. But what I'm doing with my angel network that I'm trying to build for the mining space is I'll be acting as the filter. The evidence that I know what I'm doing as a filter is in all the content that I make public for everybody to go check out. I don't ever highlight only my good stuff. All of my stuff is out there for people to take a look at and see the quality of the filtration, if you will. And that's why I'm putting this angel network. And it's going to be a very simple formula to find out about the companies that I filter, and then act as a sort of a leader to go to those companies and negotiate terms for private placements, and then bring that to the rest of the network. And so I'm putting all the plans, how to do this, following all the rules and regulations that are out there. But to keep up on that effort, all you have to do is go to my Substack, which is rocksandstocks.substack.com, and you can sign up to my email list. Some people have been so kind to even be paid subscribers. And all of that, the first ones that'll know about the companies that I've filtered and I'm approaching are those that are the paid sponsors. Secondary, the people on the email list for free will also learn about those companies. And so if you want to know about the angel network of investors for mining stocks that I'm putting together for Rocks and Stocks News, just go to my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com and sign up for either the paid version or the free version. And I'll let you know about what I'm doing on that, and expect to be making some good news on that in the not too distant future. So as always, my shows are for research and information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. And the reason that I'm always promoting people to do their homework is what I talked about earlier. You're more likely to make less emotional trades based on the day-to-day fluctuations in the stocks, and you're more likely to make logical decisions and understand the companies that you're invested in, why you're investing in them, the time frame that you're planning to invest in them, to see them make significant changes that unlock shareholder value, and that's a recipe for success. So on that note, as always, have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.